And to our friends joining us abroad, good evening. Welcome to Mirage Talk. Today, we welcome Scott Shadley, VP of Marketing for NGD Systems and Board of Directors for SNIA. And he is here to enlighten us today on driving innovation through competitive collaboration. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time today. Welcome.
My pleasure, and welcome to all again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the case may be that you currently reside in. It's a great pleasure to be part of the Mirage Talk platform, and I've watched quite a few of them myself, and hopefully will encourage that for others to want to come back and watch this one. So the idea of today's conversation is around this idea of competitive collaboration. So we're all entrepreneurs, startup members. We've done companies, we work for companies, we have different ways of looking at the business place that we're going after. And I'm taking a different kind of approach when it comes to how to market, if you will, around those. So as you can tell, I'm definitely a marketing guy. I'm branded on my shirt, I'm branded on my slides. So yes, I take it at heart that any way and opportunity I get to advertise for my organization is always helpful. Today, we'll walk through some quite a bit of information, but what I wanted to focus on to start with is kind of this idea of the puzzle pieces. So there's four major pieces that I look at when it comes to being successful in the marketplace. You have to have your innovation, which is what is making every one of us and our organizations that we work for unique. We have to find a way to educate people about it in one form or another. There's always the piece of marketing. Marketing, it's about spending. Everybody looks at marketing as the guys that spend all the money and don't necessarily do much. But at the same time, there's a lot that can be done with what money we do have to spend. And then spend quite a bit more time towards the end of the presentation about this concept of collaborative cooperation, competitive collaboration, those types of topics. And I'll explain that as we get through the presentation. So I wanted to have some fun with this. I know it's late evening for some, it's early morning, it's mid-morning for others. I'm taking the lunch hour from those on the West Coast. So I wanted to start with this idea about innovation is easy. So for those that are familiar with the US moviescapes, and I'm a huge movie buff. I don't read as many books as I should, but I watch all kinds of movies. So this was the concept from a wonderful movie called A Field of Dreams, and it was made after a book, of course. But the concept behind it was, if you build it, they will come. And there's a lot of companies and organizations that build products, design technology, and assume, and we all know what that word can also mean, that it means that the customers will come to you. And I have to say that without a doubt, I've seen many examples of, if you build it, they won't come. They're not coming to you because you've built something cool and new and they think they need it. You have to spend time in innovation and getting your innovation in front of them. And the way you do that is through your marketing efforts. And sometimes those are overlooked, especially at the early stages of startups, because you don't have a lot of funds coming in. We'll talk on that topic as well. But really what it comes down to is, you can think of a lot of the technologies that get developed in the world are like the falling tree. A tree will fall in the forest, but do you really hear the sound if no one's around? And unfortunately, a lot of companies will come and go because they create something really cool. Their tree falls, they're making lots of noise, but still nobody hears the noise that they're making. So the idea of being able to find a way to ensure that the innovations that we're doing, what our product is, whether it's the product that my company makes, the products or the technologies that you're working on, we all know that they're needed in the market. We all know why we're doing what we do, but we need to make sure that the people that are going to consume it and help us continue our successful foot forward can hear about it in the right frame and in the right reference. Because there's a lot of people that will go out and say, well, I built it, why aren't people buying it? It's not that simple. And a lot of it has to do with how you can market. And in the case of startups and institutions where you don't have a lot of budget, we can look at how we can use our competitors to help. So I thought it'd be fun to do a quick recap. So there's some really cool technologies out there that had the success of building something very unique, but didn't actually come out as a finalized product. For those of you that are of the appropriate age group, and fortunately I fall into that, I remember the Betamax VHS wars. Betamax was a superior platform, but VHS had more marketing around it. So that's one reason why it was more successful. HD DVD versus Blu-ray, the new version of that same battle. HD DVD had superior aspects of its technology, but unfortunately it lost out to its competitor. The QR code. Now, for a lot of countries, this is a very popular format. In the US, until our wonderful friend of 2020 came along, the QR code was very seldomly used in the marketplace here because of its lack of ability of showing the value to its customers of why we want to use it. This is a wonderful little tool. This is my favorite little first smartwatch. Some of you might actually recognize what that is. That's the Pebble. It was very innovative. It was very creative. At the time it came out, it set the bar for smart things on your wrist, and it made an Apple Watch look sad in comparison in a lot of different ways. But again, it was one of those innovations that came and went. If we continue to look at the marketplace, another one of my favorites is the Palm Pilot. I had that exact same version of one. I bought it, I used it forever. I switched to the Trio. The Trio was the smart version of that incorporated a phone. What happened to those products over time? It came down to how well that innovation was adapted to the market, how well the market took it and moved it forward. And then, of course, this is a representation of the world's first electronic vehicle that came out of Detroit, the GM EV1. They were supposed to build thousands of them. They ended up building 250 of them. Why was that? It's partly because of the market, and it's partly because of the market team. So it has a lot to do with taking the innovation and finding a way to move it forward. So if we think about that, the weight of the company in the industry has a lot to do with this. And this comes very much into play when I get into the competitive collaboration part. The iPhone was not the coolest thing since sliced bread when it came out, but it had a lot of weight, a lot of marketing, and a lot of effort to drive it as the de facto. To this day, Android platforms tend to drive innovation much faster than the Apple iPhone, but Apple claims innovation every time they bring out a feature that existed in a previous platform because they have that weight behind them and that ecosystem they've built around themselves. The value to the customer is another piece of that. If we think about it, the Blu-ray versus HD DVD, the Blu-ray platform, when it finally took over and won the quote battle of the wars of the disc, it had a lot more focus on how does it make the customer satisfied. Not about the technology itself, not about what's really cool about the design itself. Red laser versus blue laser, all that fun stuff is interesting, but at the end of the day, how does the customer benefit and why is it important? And that's what really drove the success of Blu-ray over HD DVD. Timing is another piece of it. We all know that we want to create something, we build stuff. I worked on a number of projects at my former employer. I spent 17 years at a very large semiconductor company called Micron. I was part of, as marketing and or engineering, 7 or 8 different innovations that the timing was just wrong. Today, every one of us that drives around and happens to go through some form of secure gate environment to get to your home, to your business place, whatever else, has an RF tag that's sitting on the front windshield of your car, sitting on your light, or allowing you in the form of a pass card, even the RFIDs that let us into our buildings. That original IP was invented and designed by people that I used to work with at my former employer. And because the timing wasn't right, they sold it off, and someone else that had the innovation and the ability to carry forward their marketing now drives the backbone of success to things in the marketplace today. And then you get into this niche versus custom versus mainstream. A lot of people in the US looked at the QR code as, oh, it's just another barcode. I don't care. And oh, look, UPS uses it on all their shipping labels. Great, that helps them deliver my products. But they didn't see it as a true innovation in this space to help drive the technology forward. Now I can't go out to dinner eating outdoors because I'm in Southern California without having to scan a QR code to get access to a menu on my smart device. When the QR code was first released in the US, the smart devices didn't have the same level of technology they did. So it was considered niche or custom. And it took a lot of effort and a pandemic in this case to drive its adoption in this particular marketplace. And then there's all the concept of marketing, and some more marketing. Of course, I'm a marketing guy. We got to get back to marketing. Tesla is by far what we'd classify as the leader in electric vehicle technology development as far as everybody in the marketplace knows, because they talk about it, people talk about it, people love their vehicles, but yet you still don't see Tesla advertising their cars on mainstream television, for example. Yet GM has recently released a whole line of video talking about how wonderful their next release of all these competitive solutions to the Tesla product are coming out. And the car that's actually taking most of the market share is a Ford Mustang that's not even a Ford Mustang. It's an SUV version, but they chose a brand associated to it that was able to drive the adoption of that technology in that product. So these are some of the things that I look at from an innovation point of view. It's not about the product we make. It's not about how cool it is, what it's about. It's about how we bring it through the marketing engine and through the education engine to make sure people want to pay attention to it. In the case of all of these products, with the exception of maybe the QR code, you can leverage your competitors to help tell your story and save on your own marketing budget. So when it comes to education, I look at this in a couple of different ways, and it's paramount, especially if you're bringing something that's different to market. you have to find a way to make sure customers understand the value that it'll bring to them and why they may or may not be interested in actually moving forward with this technology. So same solution, different directions. I can say that I make something, and you can say that you make a similar product. If we say the same words, but we use different definitions, it doesn't help solve our problem. It's a perfect example of accept and accept. I can accept something very easily, but if I create an exception without properly defining it, I make someone feel left out, or I can potentially even alienate myself. One of the most unique examples of this is, as part of my effort within SNEA, as I sit on the board there and run a couple of the working groups, we have literally spent 45 minutes of an hour-long meeting arguing over that little red comma that you're seeing, our friendly Oxford comma. The Oxford comma that helps delineate a bulleted list or an itemized list versus the combination of two items. And it's very interesting how something as simple as a comma can cause that much effort in something as simple as a one-page document or something like that, or how your innovation is accepted by a customer because you have to educate them on the value of the comma, not your product, not why they need your product, not how your product solves their problem, but making sure they understand the need for the product and understand the value that that product is bringing to them. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. And there's, for example, one of the biggest things that a lot of the large corporations that we work with in this particular industry, in the high-tech industry, is certifications. There's something about people that love to learn and be able to promote, hey, look, I learned something new. It's just like getting your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, your PhD, doesn't really matter. Create an environment that people want to learn from you. And in cases of a lot of these, people have to pay to get these. So you're actually generating revenue, helping people feel better about the fact that they understand the technology. Now, one of the tricks, every one of these companies that are on this page are multi-billion-dollar companies, multi-million-dollar companies. They have a budget, they have a capability, they have a team dedicated to developing these platforms. How can you leverage these architectures, leverage these designs, create your own unique way to do it? Part of that is an example right in the center of the page. That's SNEA. SNEA created a platform of industry company agnostic training tools that help promote technologies that their member companies are trying to bring to market. Some that exist, some that don't. And we'll get into an example of how that works with the technology related to NGD systems in the competitive collaboration. And by the way, I do apologize. I didn't do a great job of introducing myself. And I also am more than happy to take questions at any point. You can jump them in the chat window, or you can raise your hand physically. I prefer those are on camera or on the line. I've got everybody pulled up. This is a near and dear to me for a lot of reasons, because when you think about where we are today, education is very key, and I love to educate people. My first degree when I went to go to college was actually to be a physics teacher in high school. Things happened and it changed course direction, but that's great. And especially now in 2021, when we talk about how do we get there, is webinars the way to do it? We're all sitting on a webinar. There's this great new term that's been defined in the marketplace by our healthcare industry called Zoom fatigue, but we can do things live like we're doing now, where it allows immediate interaction. We can create an entire on-demand platform. All of these are different ways that we can bring education that are less costly, but even webinars to some extent cost to host. In this case, Mirage is paying for Zoom to allow us to be together in this particular room. You can do sponsored webinars through PR companies. You can do other types of things. So there are always ways of looking at how you adjust for the costs. Another aspect of it is events. You can go to or you can create events. If you're a company of the scale of VMware, sure, you create your own product. It's called VMworld. In fact, last year, the virtual platform for VMworld had its largest attendance ever because of its virtuality. 25,000 people cared enough to pay to attend an event that was solely online because VMware sponsored it. Embedded World over in Europe, that is the single largest event that exists for the tech industry that we're engaged with, that takes place, or at least was taking place physically in Germany. Again, lots of costs associated with going to an event, let alone sponsoring or creating an event. So why not find a way to generate an event that supports your technology and partnerships with other industry companies in the marketplace without actually having to pay for it yourself? And I'll explain that as we get into the next section as well. And of course, we all now have to have our YouTube channels. So YouTube's a great format. It's starting to learn a lot of statistics around that. There's lots of different ways to use it to that platform and technology. And then it comes down to length. How long, how short, what do I want to do with this architecture to make things work? So Innovation, education, both very important parts of what we have going on in our particular spaces. Then we get into the fun part where I get to start talking about really what I like to do and what's involved in marketing. And again, taking it towards the direction of the competitive collaboration. We all know how to market or have people that we hire that know how to market. And eventually our products will come to market, right? That's the whole goal. But then what can we do to actually drive that adoption and direction? So there's always budgeting involved. And my favorite part of this one is a marketing budget can be dictated by a lot of different factors. This particular slide shows what it recommends for established companies. 5 to 12% of their revenue can go to marketing. Now, if you think about a company that's a multi-million-dollar revenue company, 5% is a lot of dollars. My personal new companies, 12 to 20%. Now, 20% is an amazing number. We have one small problem. Well, 12 to 20% of zero revenue is still zero. And so how do we take our marketing technologies, our marketing efforts, what we can do from a unique perspective and turn a budget that doesn't exist into something that's more valuable? And so this is a perfect example for me when I think of analogies and ways to combine information is the story of Stone Soup. But for those of you that are familiar with it, it's a great idea. It's an interesting story that talks to how to gain traction, interest, and assistance by simply starting a conversation. So the idea of soup made from stones is so strange and interesting that as they're sitting there trying to do this and create it, people around them are offering support. They're offering the fruits or the vegetables, the meats that go into the soup. Eventually, a bowl full of rocks turns into a truly hearty stew because you did the right thing and you started with little, but were able to drive a lot by way of taking advantage of not just what you know what you're doing and what other people know of what you're doing, but the overall ecosystem associated with it, including and not short of your competitors. And there's a reason for that, because if you think about it at the end of the day, no one single company does exactly what one other single company does. That's the reason we have innovation, invention, and we have so many different opportunities from an entrepreneurship in the marketplace today. So we have different ways of looking at it. And I kind of put the dollars and cents around it from this perspective as you're building your marketing plan. And a lot of cases when people start thinking about marketing, we only think of the boundaries that exist in what we're taught in our cute MBA programs, whatever else that may be around marketing, or what we learn from watching programs like this, for example. Advertising is expensive, but it tends to be fairly effective. It just costs you a lot of dollars to get a small amount of returns. Events, again, are extremely costly. They can be, especially if you're traveling internationally, or you're trying to attend a major event and you've got the startup booth in the back left corner, and it happens to be that everybody's interested in the back right corner. So you've spent $20,000 to $30,000 on an event and nobody comes by your booth. So your lead traction is zero because you don't have anybody coming by because you didn't know how to properly plan around the event. There's ways to fix that too. Social advertising, it's not nearly as quote expensive, but LinkedIn ads, Twitter ads, Facebook ads, you name your social Instagram ads, you name your favorite social platform. This is actually becoming more and more challenging because more and more people are getting turned off by this type of advertising. So when you show up in that advertising, if you put it out, for example, a perfect example came out this morning where Burger King took advantage of, like in the UK, took advantage of a free tweet on National Women's Day talking about women should belong in the kitchen. That's all it said. Now they followed it with 3 additional tweets that clarified exactly what they meant by that and effectively overstepped what they said in a way that came across as a negative input to the marketplace. But you know what? Had they not put that first tweet out, the other 3 would never have been read, especially by media, especially by being shared into the marketplace. So by leveraging a social platform, they were actually able to gain attention to the brand around a holiday by being semi-controversial, but then following it up with real content that actually made people pay attention. So when I want to get to my customers, I built this great marketing plan that we all know how to build, we all know what to do, and it becomes the square peg in a round hole problem, and my customers are at the other end of the hole. So how do I get the corner shaved off of my marketing plan in such a way that I can fit my marketing budget and my marketing efforts into what the customers on the other end of that round hole need? That's when I start getting into this concept of talking about using other people's money in the way of collaborative and competitive collaboration. So if we think about the customer, they have this very specific need, and we all know that their needs are never really what their wants are. They tend to have an idea what they want, but their need is different. So you can build a product and your product can encompass all of the needs of the customer, and then you take it beyond that and say, guess what? I can offer you even more. And this is great if you're the one and only person talking to the customer. The issue that starts to arise is my second competitors coming in and, oh, guess what? They cover part of the need, but they're making a lot of noise and getting customer attention. Oh, don't forget customer C or customer D or customer E. All of these people are coming in and saying, hey, look, I have this really cool idea. And they're all trying to garner a piece of that customer's need and or want. Even though you may have the absolute best product, you may not have the budget, you may not have the contacts, you may not have the resources to actually garner that attention, because what you had solving their problem is being overshadowed by all of these other solutions that this customer is paying attention to. So when you have those phone calls or you make those emails and you wonder why you're not getting a response, it's not because they may or may not be interested in what you're doing. It's the whole squeaky wheel. You're being very squeaky, but so are so many other people. And in some cases, they're being inspired or promoted or addressed by simply being more visible. And I could give you numerous examples of where I talk to a customer and they're like, well, what about? Or what about this product? Or what about this product? Because they saw that in an ad somewhere where they didn't see yours, and you're coming in as the new guy and they're like, but this product says it does what I needed to do. And it really doesn't solve the customer problem, but it has their ear because they have that ability to do that. So how can I leverage their voice to sell my product? And there's ways you can do this in some very creative ways. So competitive companies working together to create market traction is what these what I classify as industry associations are designed around. So I'm a member of SNIA, SNIA. It's the Storage Networking Industry Association. It's been around for over 20 years, and it's a whole bunch of companies that build like products that compete with one another in the marketplace to drive forward customer adoption. And so that's a perfect example of how this works. And now, just keep in mind, you are never the only one. Someone else is trying to sell to your customer a product like yours. It's not your product because your product is unique to you, but they're going to get that attention and they're going to get that visibility. So why not leverage that? So if you think about it, there's lots of these things that talk about innovation as a light bulb, and I'm turning on a light bulb. They're all light bulbs. They may be different colors, but they all are light bulbs. They're solving the same problem from a different perspective. And each perspective has its warrants and its merits. Now, it may cause you to lose a customer X to a customer Y, and Z, but if I gain 3 by losing 1 because my competitors are helping me sell my technology, I think that's still a win, especially if I can get the right 3 in favor of the 1 that they take away. So we're all shooting arrows at the target. We all want to get that center target, but the customer's moving around so much that you're never able to actually hit the target because they're listening to so many different stories. My story, your story, their story, everybody's talking about it. And in a lot of cases, we talk about it with a different voice. So when I talk about it, I have to explain what the definition of what my product is. And if I'm spending time talking about the definition of what my product is, I'm not selling my product. And I'm also not helping the customer understand why my product solves their problem. At the end of the day, customers aren't looking for products. They're not looking for a company. They're looking for a way to solve a problem. And you have to be able to solve their problem with the technology and a conversation that doesn't require you to explain yourself first. So being the only one is actually a problem, especially in our marketplace today, the market that we work in. I'm in a storage industry. I sell solid state drives. It goes into every computer mainframe storage product. It's the replacement for the hard drive. So the first thing people think of when I say I have an SSD is it's commodity, it's simple, and a whole bunch of people make it. And then I go and say, well, wait, I have a product that brings intelligence to storage. I just set myself aside as the only person doing that because I'm the only person using that term and the only person talking about that technology. And it also creates a sourcing problem, especially in my marketplace. I don't have somewhere I can flip to someone else or buy it from another party because once you implement it, it's just mine. A perfect example of this in my particular marketplace is a company back in the day called Fusion.io invented or delivered, I should say delivered, the first production PCIe attached SSD. But in order to use it, you had to rewrite the kernel of your platform. The underlying operating system, your system, had to be rewritten to take that product. Now, if I want to usurp that product, I can't plug and play for it. It has to be rewritten to address my product, creating a whole ecosystem of one-offs and lock-ins. And especially as we get into cloud environments and talking hyperscale and on-prem, off-prem, going to cloud storage, just think about migrating from AWS to Google or AWS to Azure. These are creating more and more problems. And if you're the only one offering it, that actually can create an issue for you, even though you have the best product, people don't necessarily want to take it from you. And so the market does offer in all of the different market spaces you want to be in. If you're talking healthcare, if you're talking biogenetics, if you're talking automotive, if you're talking semiconductors, there are always aspects of what's going on in the market around you, groups that you can join, associations you can be a part of, even if you're not vocal, that show your presence, and you can leverage that to be able to drive what's happening in the marketplace forward. So what I want to do now is talking about how you can take advantage of playing nice with others. And so we have various different ways we can do that today. Of course, we get our investors. Our investors bring us in money and also give us the opportunity to talk to more people, do introductions, wonderful engagement path to get started. Another highly leveraged architecture is the use of academia. We can go to a whole bunch of different companies, go to all kinds of research institutions and utilize the academic resources to actually drive technology forward. In the case of the West Coast here in the state of California, the University of Santa Cruz, the University of San Diego, and the University of Southern California all have research around my particular marketplace. Two of those three are specifically sponsored by me. One is sponsored by my competitor, but I'm in there because I get to participate in the research with them. So there are ways you can even leverage academia to help yourself out. And it becomes now, when we're talking about leveraging others, collaboration is key, not competing with them. We know we need to compete with them for the actual end customer dollar, but getting to the customer, showing some form of collaboration is more important than taking advantage of screen time, for example. So what do I mean by that? So this is an example of two companies that are fighting over a customer. They're playing tug of war. And at this point in time, it's great. They're at a stalemate. So they're sitting here. I'm talking to the customer. They're talking to the customer. Where is the customer in this picture? This particular picture does not show the customer anywhere. It shows two people fighting over access to the customer. The customer is sitting back there going, guys, when you're done hashing it out, let me know. I'll start talking to whoever wins if there's a winner involved. So you're actually creating more problem than you are solution if you focus on competing versus collaborating. Now, I will tell you 100%, you have to compete. There is a different aspect of marketing, which is all about why I'm better. But you got to get to the point where you're able to have the conversation with the customer, ask, why are you better? Getting in the door is actually a little bit harder spot of all of us, especially as brand new companies. And that's where the collaboration piece can come into play. So this is an example of my technology. And this is before I joined the organization. The company had started, they didn't have a marketing guy. And I'm not saying I fixed it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that smart. But we call this technology that we build in this fancy little drive, in situ processing. And we use the tagline, bringing intelligence to storage. Really cool. In situ processing is a great academic term. I love my CTO for coming up with it, put it into practice. If you're not in my business, you have no idea what that means. We actually had to help people understand what the term in situ meant. And then bringing intelligence to storage. Great. My storage is dirt cheap. Why do I need to bring intelligence to it? So we had to have that conversation. At the end of the day, we brought a resource to customers they never knew was possible, but it took time to explain that. So then I have a competitor in the marketplace. Looks very similar in what the customer would actually buy and plug in, doesn't it? They called it computational storage, and they use the term compute to data. Now, computational storage and in-situ processing are synonymous. Compute to data and bringing intelligence to storage are synonymous, but the customer is hearing very different words with the same definition. So we have to be careful and we have to find a way to move it forward. Now we bring in a third party. This guy, look, the shape and form factor is identical. We're selling them all the same little black box, silver box. They called it no-load acceleration. Now, if I may not be the smartest guy in the marketplace, but I don't go to a customer and tell them no load and expect them to understand that that's actually valuable. So I love the guy that came up with it. He's a good friend of mine. But for the market to accept a term no load, it made no sense. And then he calls it an FPGA accelerator. Well, first thing that people think of an FPGA accelerator is not that form factor. It's a different form factor. It's a PCIe card that sticks in the box in the back of the box, not in the front of the chassis. So how do you explain that? How do you take advantage of that and get it to the next level? So these three companies, myself and these two other companies, Scaleflux and Identicom, As marketeers, we're friends in the marketplace. We all know about each other. We've all worked with each other. It's a very small business space. And sure, in a lot of cases, all of your businesses that you run, you have friends that work for competitors or friends that work for companies that you either want to have buy you, look at you, or use your product. So we're all in our own small little worlds in our own special way. So why not take advantage of that and actually leverage it? So the three companies got together, sat down and brought a whole bunch of people in a room and said, why don't we work together to solve the customer problem? Because while all three of these little boxes look the same, they provide a different solution of the same type of technology. So we're going to use the industry to drive the technology forward to get customers to pay attention so that I can then go in and not have to sell them on cool new tech or why new tech or what the new tech is, but how I solve their problem with the technology they're hearing about. And that's really where this starts to really drive success. So from a SNEA point of view, prior to this call, many of you have probably no idea what NGD system is. And we did a great job of making it very hard for people to understand why we have NGD, or a three-letter acronym for the name of our company. So we actually had fun with it. We renamed ourselves Nerds, Geeks, and Dorks just to try to help people understand or think about what it is our technology is, because NGD systems means nothing to anybody in the marketplace. You look at scale flux. What does that mean to anybody in the marketplace? I'm not even sure what the purpose of that is. But what if we start looking at other companies that are interested in this technology that actually have a product that might carry a little more weight? Now, I don't think I'll find anybody on this call or anybody who'll ever watch this webinar that doesn't know who Samsung is and the fact that they make all kinds of cool technology and products. Well, what about VMware? They're another company. I was just talking about an event. 25,000 people paid to watch a virtual event based on their technology. Western Digital, Seagate, ARM, AMD, Intel, Dell, IBM, Lenovo, all huge companies, large marketing budgets, large revenue, large voice. Guess what? They're part of the working group within SNEA that the three little guys founded that now has 47 different companies talking about the technology. Now, I'm a small voice in this big picture. Yes, that is true. But when it comes to talking about the tech, every one of these companies, whether they're actually producing a product or not, have started using the term that we use SNEA to define to explain what our marketplace is and help drive the technology forward. Out of all 47 companies, 4 of them have product. 2 of them are in production. And guess what? I'm one of them. So I spent a lot of my time and effort making sure my product was ready for delivery so that when all these people started talking about it, we could actually have some fun with it. There was an event in November of last year, a virtual event, normally takes place in August, that has almost every one of these companies attending to it. And that was the first event in the last 5 years where the term computational storage that we now use for our technology that we leveraged off of a competitor because it made sense and they picked the right word. We just decided to start using it too. 3 of these large companies, Western Digital, Samsung, Kioxia, actually 4, and Micron, all use the term computational storage as in technologies they're going to work on in the future. That's awesome. I love it. So when somebody says, well, they said they're going to work on it, they are going to work on it. Guess what? I already have it for you today. Let's talk about how I can fix your problem. I'm leveraging their keynote dollars to promote the technology that I can deliver today. I'm not worried about when they come along and have a product because you know what? I'll probably be in the customer delivering a solution before they get there. So I'm going to leverage their assets. We defined a term. We actually made it an industry definition. There's actually a link that is there that links off to SNEA.org around computational storage as an architecture that provides offloading, host processing, and reducing data movement. Using terms that all those companies know that their customers will understand in this particular marketplace to drive it forward. And when you talk about being the only one, I need a way to make people happy that my architecture is not going to cause them trouble down the road. So we built an architecture document. Now, this document doesn't say plug part A into part B to execute operation C. It says, here's an ecosystem of solutions that are being provided by your suppliers, one of them being me, that can do different things. And here's what those different things are. So this is educating people from an agnostic point of view, leveraging the resources of all those other companies who have people participating in those meetings to make sure our joint customers understand how to use the technology. And it helps with getting visibility of the organization because you get to put your name on the byline. And it gets customers more comfortable adopting a technology because it's not a one-off. It's a commonplace architecture that exists. Now, my favorite part of this concept of competitive collaboration, this is an example from SNIA of what it costs an organization to join the platform. Now, that bottom line, if I'm a startup with revenue less than 10 years and in business for less than 4, I can join, participate, and I can use that 47 company slide presentation for $0. Cost me nothing to participate. I don't even have to worry about it. I can pay $1,000 for a non-voting position. Or if I have a little bit of revenue, guess what? It costs me, if I want to vote on what happens, $9,000. But a company like Samsung, Intel, Micron, they're paying $42,000 a piece to get access to that same resource. So I put in a little, they put in a lot. All of it gets pulled together to share the technology definition moving forward and making success out of the marketplace. So what does that look like? How about press releases that talk about your technology on behalf of SNIA, who has much larger mailing lists than I do and much more attention in the market than I do, but it mentions my company. It talks about the fact that I have a product in that space. They do symposiums, they do events that's called Storage Developer Conference. I get to go to a conference, present my technology in a 45-minute technical presentation, and it costs me $0 to participate, and they have thousands of people that attend it wanting to learn. And when you get going and you get these technologies moving forward in something like this, all of a sudden, guess what? There's now an event for the first time this year that is talking about computational storage as part of a summit in April. And I'm not paying to sponsor that event. I'm not paying to create the event. I'm leveraging the SNIA engine to build awareness, attention, and interest in my technology by way of my simple $9,000 investment. And I get to participate in that event. You're going to see my name. I'm participating as on behalf of SNIA. I'm participating on behalf of NGD, and I'm talking about this really cool technology that's going to make everybody's life better. And it doesn't require me to sit there and fight for a lead with a competitor. I'm educating, I'm bringing attention, and I'm driving attention to my company in the whole process. I think it was great. One of the previous talks, Sasha was on here, and he made the comment, being the moderator of a panel can actually be more valuable than being the panelist. That's very true. I've seen it happen in these places. I've been moderators of panels that should have been panels I could have been a panelist on. I chose to moderate because it gave me that voice that didn't exist as just being the panelist. Because people look at the moderator as the authority and the panelist as the expert. So if I'm the authority, I'm asking an expert for their opinion, but I'm already telling them what I want to hear from you. So these are different things that you can do to leverage the competitive collaboration and look at, this is one great example. For my particular marketplace, we have another one called OCP, the Open Compute Project. Facebook and Microsoft got sick and tired of everybody trying to fight for their business and create one-off solutions. They said, let's get together and create a consortium and make everybody conform to that. And you know what? Facebook and Microsoft compete for your business as an end customer of wanting to use their platforms, but they got together and created a platform to share it. We have things like the open, there's a thing called Open Snappy. There's the Linux consortium that creates the base of Linux operating systems for all software out there. No one company owns Linux. They own their version or their support of an open platform. And that's because a bunch of companies got together and said, let's make it easier for our customers to adopt it, and then we'll put our spin on it. And that's how you can take advantage of this. So when you go back to this idea of what the customer's looking for, instead of having just your product addressing their need and being perfectly situated for them and having to deal with the noise, all of the competition comes in. And there, again, you've helped them center around that customer need because you've collaborated with them to bring this technology to market. But notice that your voice is now being heard in a more efficient and effective manner. All the other voices are saying the same words, and you have the product or solution that actually gives them the better end result of what they're looking for. So we're trying to make sure that we're doing stuff in a way that I'm promoting my technology, but I'm talking about others. I've done 4 or 5 presentations wearing this shirt where I've specifically highlighted the benefits of my competitor's product. And you know why? Because they're satisfying a segment of the market that I'm not playing in, but it's part of my market. Because my product is not a catch-all for everything. There's so many of these different customer need bubbles that fit around inside this ecosystem. I can get one, or I can get many, but why spend my time, or I guess spending my time and my money and my dollars marketing or educating or selling to someone about one specific version of a technology when we can leverage the industry to take care of that for us. So innovation is very important, but we have to make sure that the customers understand the value of the innovation. And if we're the fallen tree, it doesn't help. We need to be able to have that right voice. If we build it, they won't come unless the customer has a reason to walk out of the cornfield. Marketing requires creativity, especially when it comes to entrepreneurial startups and efforts that we're doing today, because we have to take effort to make sure that we're not overspending but at the same time creating the right message. So there's a lot of effort. I personally get bothered by it almost every day when I go on LinkedIn or I go on somewhere else and I see someone new in the space who just got funded and all of a sudden this beautiful, glorious marketing campaign comes out about their company and their technology. But you know what? They're using my buzzword that I helped create, computational storage, as part of their conversation piece. So when someone says, oh, I don't know what that is, they're going to Google it. You know who's going to actually come up on SEO before they do? I will, because I've been in the marketplace driving it longer than they have. Those are the different types of ways that you can be very creative with your marketing and your message. Education can be very costly. Let others help you. The SDC event, the Storage Developer Conference I talked about, 3 years ago, there was one presentation on computational storage. 2 years ago, there were 5. This year, we're looking at 15. And they're not all from a vendor like myself. We have industry analysts talking about it. I have companies like Gartner, who does a lot of research in the industry. IDC is another industry research company. 451 Research, who's part of SCP Global now. All of these research firms are doing and talking about this technology from their point of view about the value that it's going to bring to the market. And I get a reference. They talk about me. So I get the opportunity to have a small voice in that big pond using very, very little dollars of my own to make that message happen. And then, of course, keep in mind, being collaborative with your competitors is not really going to be that difficult. No one builds the exact same thing. If I look at my space, I have this concept of an NVMe SSD. And if you Google that, you'll see every company in the market has one. Not every one of them is identical. There's something unique that each company does to try to make their product better than the other. But they all talk about it using the term NVMe SSD because that's what the industry accepts. We've now driven the same exact thing with this concept of computational storage. So that's a perfect example of why using this capability is a good example of making things happen. And keep in mind, customers want your solution. They just need to know that it's worth the effort and that you don't have to spend as much time explaining why you did it, but how it helps them. And how it helps them is by not having to spend this time in the ecosystem and the marketing dollars and everything else to make them try to understand what that product is. So there's a couple of questions that came in on the chat window, and then we'll open it up. One of them is, how can you protect your IP in this collaboration with competitors? I'll be honest, it's a dance. In the SNIA group, I run the technical marketing group that's writing that architecture document. There are very fun conversations where people go quiet while they have to think of the words that they want to use so that they don't give up IP. And there's actually an IP policy associated with SNIA. You join it, you share IP, that's your specific IP as part of a document, you've now freed that IP up. Now, you can choose to do that, especially if that IP doesn't have a negative impact on your end revenue product. If it's something you've done a long time ago or something that isn't so secretive that it's not going to be figured out by others. But there is some IP potential collusion and issues there. So you just have to be careful as you join these groups and drive them in the way that you want to. I have another one that says, I have 2 external SSDs. One is a Samsung and the other one is an I don't know. It's inside a box and I never bothered to look to remember the brand name. I'm happy with both. What went wrong here? So this comes down to the idea of once you get a product that's really driven into mainstream, you start getting a lot of copycats. And there's a lot of things that you can do research around copycat marketing and things like that. Some people start to sell products and technologies that look and feel just like a Samsung or someone else for fewer dollars with a lower cost or lower quality component, but it looks the same to you when you see it on a store shelf. For example, if you buy it at a local retailer or online on Amazon, you're like, okay, it's cheaper, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. So you have to be realizing that when you do get into certain spots of the market, it does still come down to cost. There's always going to be a cost play and everything. And by the way, on an external SSD, when you plug it in, you can actually use Windows or the Mac platform to tell you who's inside of it if you really want to know. So there are ways to actually find out that kind of information. But At the same time, I guarantee you Samsung had it first. And they're going to have it first, and people are going to pay for the Samsung over others just because of brand recognition in some cases. But that's secondary products in the market. So somebody won. Okay.
Scott, I have another question.
Yes.
Hi. I'm a marketeer as well, a veteran one. The old adage, when you approach customers with a new product, with something new, innovative, and you think you are solving a problem, but it turns out they have no problems. I mean, as they say, they don't have a problem.
Right.
I'm used to this. Why should I change? All the bother, more money, more time. How do you tackle those objections?
So that is an age-old problem. Will always continue to be a problem from a marketing point of view. It comes down to how easy you can resell that solution to them. So yes, everyone has a problem whether they want to admit it or not. So first of all, you don't tell them they have a problem. You ask them if they're having an issue. Because if you tell them that you're solving a problem, you're already poking at them saying they didn't do something right. So always go in saying, I have an idea. Do you have an issue with this? And you bring in a specific example of uh, uh, industry, for me, industry related, an SQL database that's not running fast enough. If the customer says no, that's fine. Ask the next question and continue to the point where they start saying, well, actually, how about this? And that you try to open them up. Never be confrontational, always be questionary. Go in as if you're an eager student trying to learn from them more than you are the teacher trying to educate them on a new technology. That seems to have worked very well for a lot of the work that I've done in the past to help get them over that hump. You may not win and they may not have the interest in the product at the end of the day, but anytime you go in and tell someone there's a problem or that you have a solution for something they've done wrong, you're always going to put them at the arm's length, especially as we're getting into more and more aggressive movements around, personal satisfaction and things like that, and job satisfaction and job career capability. If my boss hears I have a problem, that means I didn't do my job right. So approach them more as an eager student ready to learn what they're trying to solve, not try to solve it for them.
Yeah, agree.
That's how I would look at it.
Yeah. I work mostly in the medical world, and 9 out of 10 physicians you talk with are quite stubborn. They know everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're not a physician yourself, you're always one step behind their way of thinking. So it's tough, but I survived it so far.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. And again, I may not be right and it may not work for every marketplace, but when you know someone you're going in to feel that they're the authority, never question their authority. And highlight how the market around them, not a competitor or a next door neighbor or even their, if they're a dermatologist, you go tell them that this other dermatology group has started looking at a new idea. Would you be interested? Go ahead and approach it in kind of that angle, help solve some of those problems. Mm-hmm. The idea is simply don't poke, but simply ask for help. If you ask people for help, they tend to want to help you.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah.
We have time for a few more questions. Does anyone else have some questions for Scott? Don't be shy.
I woed everybody into silence. But I'll just say again, I'm definitely not the most aggressive marketeer. I actually started as an engineer, turned into a marketeer. So some people say I got the frontal lobotomy. I've done this now for going on 15 years plus 10 years behind that as an engineer. And so that's one reason why I know when I approach an engineer, I don't go in telling them what's wrong. I go in asking them how is their current platform working and is there something they could see done better, and then go from there. And when it comes to kind of the concept that I've been focusing on today, know that your competitor is doing the same thing, know that they're saying similar words, and just help make sure that they understand that there's a global support, a market level support for them if you're able to drive something like we can do with SNIA. If I can go in and say, well, I have this really interesting idea. There's this new term that SNIA has been working on. We'd like to understand if you're interested in this type of technology. A, they should hopefully know about it if they're in the right space and there's a SNIA for you. And B, it gives them an opportunity to learn from you in a less supplier specific, but more of an overall market point of view, and be ready to let them know that you're willing to talk about the market and even be willing to highlight some of your your shortcomings of that technology as it relates to your product. My product is not a catch-all for computational storage. And I will go into a customer and say, can you do this? I'm like, you know what? My product's not designed to do that, but there are others in the space that are working on that. And if it comes down to it, I know I'm not going to get a customer and I can hand them over to a competitor because it gives me goodwill. And I know there's no way I can solve that problem today, tomorrow, next product, whatever. I've even been willing to do that just to make sure that the next time the customer's interested in the tech and the solution fits, they'll come back and find me. So I did get one more question. What are some external signs in the market that your product has moved from the custom to the mainstream? Is it all about big branding? I would say big branding helps, but I think what it really comes down to is when you stop supporting PR and you stop driving interviews with media outlets and they start outreaching to you, you start to see that it's becoming more mainstream because other people are wanting to pay attention to the technology you're talking about. And it's not you pushing it, it's not your competitor pushing it. I most recently, a good example for me is in January, there were 4 industry sponsored articles by industry writers, never talked to me once, but yet wrote a paragraph on my company related to the technology that they heard about from SNIA or from some other company. Or in this particular case, we did end up having a nice small cloud guy called Amazon start talking about the tech. So that did help. But yeah, it is a roller coaster. Gartner has what they call a hype cycle that's associated to that roller coaster. And there's no guaranteed way to know that it happens, but there's indicators that show that your technology is moving forward when you and your competitors don't have to pay to have it written about. That's a good way to look at it too.
Well, we have time for just about one more question before we close. All right. Well, I guess that's about it. Scott, thank you so much for being here today and enlightening our Mirage tribe. Highly appreciated. On behalf of Paul Mirage, thank you so much. Yishai and Ellie, thank you so much. If anyone has missed any portion of today's talk, you can find it on mirageinstitute.miragetalks.org. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, and hopefully it was useful information. Have a wonderful day.